Okay, so Vermont and Maine are back in the news, once again reporting their tourism struggles to the US media. At least Maine is not reporting another stupid senator writing a letter. It's the same story we heard before, but I wanted to point out a few things they aren't saying, and a few things that they're actually assuming. We've also got a new CTV report showing US travel to Canada is now outpacing Canadian travel to the US. I honestly wasn't too impressed with how CTV framed the story, so I'm going to call them out on it. And finally, we got an update on the New Zealand mom and her son who were detained at the Peace Arch border crossing. Before we start, today's backdrop comes from David P., who caught this shot of the Canadian snowbirds in Chilliwack while they were in BC for the Abbotsford Air Show. Thanks for sending this over to us, David. I won't go through the whole reminder about double-checking the copycat channels. I think by now the community knows what to do if they run into them, but I do appreciate everyone who's continuing to report them. Before we get started though, back in early July, I mentioned that a US media outlet reached out to me for an interview. It was the first time I've ever done something like that, and I had no idea what I was doing. So it was definitely a new experience. I wanted to give everyone a sneak peek of how it went.
How would you say Canada-US relations feels different this time around, Trump's second term, which started January 20th, versus his first term, which was 2017 to 2021? Does it feel like things are different or like relatively the same?
Oh, it's 100% different. I mean, during his first term, I was still going to the US. Yes, he did impose tariffs on us and, there was things going on, but it wasn't to this extent. And back on his first term, I was still coming to Hawaii. I was still cross-border shopping, went to Vegas a few times, LA. That didn't really faze me. But this time around, man, I'm really glad I upgraded my 5-year-old earbuds to a proper mic setup. The interview that you just heard happened back in July. It was a really good discussion and honestly a great experience for me. The person interviewing was also very easy to work with and we covered a lot of ground. I'd definitely be happy to speak with her again. That interview video is scheduled to be released sometime in early September. I think a lot of you will enjoy it and it will give you some perspective from the state that this person's from. All right, let's get into the first report.
Secretary of Commerce and Secretary of Agriculture say they've just returned from a visit to our northern neighbors, where they met with a member of the Canadian Parliament to discuss cross-border relations.
Their meeting comes as statistics have shown a pretty significant drop in visits from Canadians across our region this year, after President Trump declared that he wants to make Canada the 51st U.S. state and refused to acknowledge Canada as a sovereign nation. While communities in Vermont and New York are feeling impacts, local leaders say they are optimistic for the future. Here's NBC5's Anna Goober.
As data shows, Canadian tourism is down in parts of our region this year. In the community here in St. Albans, they are showing literal signs of support for their northern neighbors.
We still care, and nothing around here has changed.
All right, I'm going to vent a little bit on this. I really can't stand it when I hear people say nothing has changed about whatever state they're in. Like everything is just normal. From their own eyes, inside their lone little box, maybe it looks like nothing has changed. But if they actually take a step back, did a bit of research, or look beyond their small little circle, they would see that everything has changed. It reminds me of my interview with R. He mentioned how most Americans really don't care about what happens outside of their border, or even state or local county. So when this person says nothing has changed, to me it shows she doesn't get it. And unfortunately, she probably never will. Let me know if you agree with me in the comments, or if I'm overreacting.
It's the message Maureen Brown hopes signs like these sent to her northern neighbors during what the general manager of the St. Albans Hampton Inn says has been a noticeably slower year for Canadian tourism.
We had 2 Canadian tour groups that were booked for this year, and they both canceled.
Did those groups give a reason for why they didn't want to come?
They wouldn't get into it specifically, other than it's just the climate within the States right now.
Brown also chairs the St. Albans City Downtown Board and says she's seeing the impact on businesses throughout her community and beyond.
I see it with the numbers in the whole region, not just here, but Burlington area and whatnot. It's definitely an off year for everyone.
Personally, I don't think this is going to be an off year. I think it's going to last much longer than that, especially if Trump keeps running his mouth and spewing out more garbage. And here's the major difference that I see. This isn't like COVID or 9/11 or any other natural disaster that temporarily keeps tourists away, whether it's a hurricane or tornado or whatever else. What we're seeing right now is generational damage. Canadians and even international allies are saying enough is enough. We're done with the US. And the reality is, this kind of damage isn't going away. It's deep. It's going to stick for years, and there's no way to come back from it.
According to U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, trips across the northern border are down 39% this July over last in Vermont, and down 36% in northern New York. And as tensions persist between the U.S. and Canada, state leaders say they're doing their part to repair relations.
We are committed to reassuring folks that when people are ready to visit us, that we're here for them and we'll be welcoming, and that we do respect their sovereignty.
After a recent meeting with a member of the Canadian Parliament, Vermont Secretary of Commerce Lindsay Curley and Secretary of Agriculture Anson Tebbetts say they remain optimistic for a more united future.
They're thirsty to get back together with Vermont, and we're thirsty to get back together with Canada.
Sorry, Mr. Oblivious government official, but who exactly in Canada told you that we're thirsty to get back together with Vermont? I would really like to know. Was it one of our own government officials who was trying to smooth things over with you on a diplomatic level? Or was it a Maple MAGA who probably just should move to the south anyways? The vast majority of Canadians are not eager, as you say, to get back together with Vermont or the US. Now sure, if you're talking with our government officials, they always say diplomatic things. They'll try to make it sound like both sides can work it out. But from where I sit, and from where a lot of everyday Canadians sit, it's a completely different story. You'll never hear this in the press briefings. But I get it. You're speaking to your own citizens and telling them what they need to hear, not the reality.
And we're going to do it one person at a time. We're going to do it 10 people at a time, and we're going to build those relationships.
Following that visit up north, the Secretary of Commerce says Canadian leaders are expected to come visit the Green Mountain State. Her office says the details of that are being finalized, but we will continue to provide updates about the visit as we learn more. In St. Albans, Anna Goober, NBC 5 News.
Governments can visit across the border all they want, on both sides. But at the end of the day, it's just wasting taxpayers' money. And let me be real clear on this, Mr. Government Official. You can strike any deal you want with Ottawa, but it won't matter if the people don't back it. It's Canadians like me and people in this community who decide whether your economy thrives again or sinks even deeper into the dumpster fire. You need Canadians to cross the border and spend our money in the US. But here's your problem. We're not doing it. Even if our government told us support Vermont, which I know they won't, I still wouldn't go. And neither would thousands of Canadians who are done with the US. So maybe go for a different approach and try looking at Washington, D.C. instead. I want to thank one of our channel members for sending me this report and taking the time to help with the research. All right, let's check out the next report, straight from our favorite state in the US.
Todd, the number of Canadians bound for the U.S. has outnumbered the amount of Americans looking to visit our side of the border every month since well before the pandemic. But as the trade war continues to see many Canadians avoid the States, that number has flipped. In June, nearly 1.8 million Americans made a visit to Canada, compared to just under 1.7 million Canadians who took a trip to the States. While overall travel was down in both directions compared to years past, the rare reversal is a clear indicator of how Canadians are feeling when it comes to tariffs implemented by U.S. President Donald Trump. But political science professor Jamie Essex says the boycott won't last forever.
That stuff is hard to sustain over a long period when you've got two countries like the U.S. and Canada that are, despite all the big talk the last several months, still very closely intertwined economically and socially, culturally.
Let's dive.
Wow, that's a pretty bold statement from this political science guy. According to him, we're still tied to the US economically, socially, and culturally, and we're going to drop things like nothing happened. Here's my take on it, from the perspective of a regular Canadian. Economically, I'm cutting off ties with US products and produce. Socially, I want nothing to do with the US. Culturally, exact same answer as socially. To me, it sounds like this guy's leaning too heavily on history, assuming that the behaviors always fall back in line with old habits. That's a big assumption to make. What he's not factoring in is just how angry Canadians and international allies really are. So what do you think? Will this boycott fade out like he's predicting? Or will Canadians stick with it for the long haul? Let me know in the comments.
Into these numbers further as it pertains particularly to our region. The amount of people using land crossings heading from New Brunswick into Maine dropped by nearly 80,000 less travelers this July compared to 2024. That marks the biggest single-month change year over year since the decline began in February. In July, 203,814 people crossed from New Brunswick into Maine by car at land ports, according to U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Over the same month last year, that number was over 284,000 people.
So you're telling me that a difference of 80,568 cars crossing the border is enough to cause this much chaos in Maine's tourism? Something doesn't add up here. But that's just my opinion. I'd really like to see the breakdown of that 203,000 that went over. Remove any business travel, commercial travel, then we'll actually see the real number.
And it's not just maritime land ports seeing a drop in numbers here. The Cat Ferry, which transports passengers between Yarmouth and Bar Harbor, also continues to report a significant drop in Canadian bookings. As of August 14th, just under 34,000 passengers had trips booked on the boat going either direction, a decline of over 7,000 people from 2024. And Todd, there's already plenty of interest into what the August border crossing numbers will look like. In years past, it's been the busiest month for travelers crossing from New Brunswick into Maine, with nearly 309,000 travelers making the drive in 2024.
I'm definitely interested in seeing the August numbers. My guess? It might be up a little, but nowhere near what the US border states are hoping for. The official numbers always come out late, but the best early indicator is simple. US businesses, shops, restaurants, and even tourism officials whining that their bottom line is hurting. That's why I'm disappointed with the CTV report. The way they framed it felt a little bit off. It ignored what regular Canadians like you and I are actually saying and what we actually feel, and instead, it came across like a PR piece for the US tourism industry. They made it sound like the boycott is losing steam, when in reality, it's the opposite. CTV should be talking to Canadians directly, because we're the ones with the money. And we're the ones that are refusing to spend it in the US. If you agree with me on my take on the CTV report, let me know in the comments. Now moving on, we have an update from the New Zealand woman and her 6-year-old son who were detained at the Peace Arch border crossing in Washington state.
Like the room was a decent size, but if you have 12 people in there, it's going to be crowded.
That's how a New Zealand mom is describing conditions during her time in ICE custody. Sarah Shaw and her 6-year-old son Isaac crossed over to Vancouver, BC from the U.S. in July. On her way back home to the state of Washington, she was stopped at the border. Her attorney says a paperwork error caused an issue with her visa, but her son's documents were correct.
This is the part that really bothers me about her situation. Her son's paperwork and documents were all correct. So why did CBP feel the need to put him on a flight to Texas? In earlier reports, it made it clear that friends and family were ready to pick him up, so he didn't have to go through that ordeal. But the lack of empathy, and maybe even common sense and listening to the rules, is just mind-blowing from CBP. Her son had all the proper documents, nothing against him whatsoever, and yet he still got a free trip to a detention center.
Yet, they were both flown to the South Texas Family Residential Center, where they were detained for 3 weeks. She says phone and TV access and privacy were hard to come by.
If I needed to go to the bathroom, Isaac was there yelling at me outside the stall. If I wanted to take a shower, he had to come with me. So it was like we were like completely like joined to the hip.
When they got out, Shaw was released with an ankle monitor and without any of her documents. Now that she's home, she's working to get that removed and her documents back. A reminder, she has no criminal history.
No criminal history. Wasn't Trump only supposed to detain the criminals, gang members, and killers? This is what the US has become. And what's even more disgusting is that there are people in the US cheering for this. So what's my take on this video? First, border states are hurting. Vermont, Maine, Washington State, Montana, and others. They can do all the visits they want, and our governments could go visit them as well. But the governments don't have the power to fix this, or force us to start traveling to Vermont again. That power rests with Canadians. Second, that CTV report. I don't even know what to say. It's sad to see that Canadian news outlets downplaying the reality and putting out a piece that ignores the opinion of everyday Canadians like you and I. All we can do is keep calling them out, double down on our boycott, and be even more vocal. And last, Sarah Shaw from New Zealand was able to get out safely, and I'm happy for that. But how many thousands of others are still stuck in the same situation without the chance that she had? I'm not saying she got special treatment, but there are still thousands in detention who have no media coverage at all. This is why I won't be going to the US, and why I'll continue to keep holding the line. Now, some of you emailed me to ask where my mom got her grizzly bear photos. I thought this would be a good time to share that again, and also support a Canadian company. And if you're planning to take a trip on Vancouver Island, this might be something you want to check out. So my mom told me that they went on a tour with Homalco Wildlife and Cultural Tours near Campbell River. The package that they booked was actually the Deluxe Grizzlies and Culture Tour. And from the looks of it, they have plenty of other tours available as well. So if you're heading to Vancouver Island and you want to see the West Coast wildlife while supporting a Canadian company, I'll leave a link in the description below. If you found this video helpful, hit the like and subscribe button so more people can see this video, and also share it with your friends as well. And if you're still here and you still want to see my other videos, or if you want to hear my cat in the other videos, Check out the other videos now showing up on your screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.